Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on true knowledge, understanding the value of knowledge from different perspectives, analyzing it from different points of view, three in particular, which we will go over, and understanding the topmost knowledge to human existence. So, we would like to analyze knowledge and the value of knowledge from three different perspectives. That which is common to all of us, which is material or scientific study of matter. Second, metaphysical knowledge, that which is more subtler, but yet keeping it as scientific or empiric as possible. And thirdly, spiritual knowledge, or that knowledge which comes from scripture. In particular, we would like to give insight from the Vedic perspective and the value of the Vedic knowledge or spiritual knowledge coming from the Vedic tradition, and the synthesis of the three. What we're trying to achieve by this is showing different levels of human knowledge and study of that knowledge and what it has brought us to be or to become. Have we become better people by accumulating, by understanding, or by achieving higher levels of knowledge? Ultimately, we want to show the development of consciousness from the first level, material knowledge, to the higher level, metaphysical knowledge, to the ultimate level, spiritual knowledge, and concluding with that person who has three levels of knowledge. Then can you imagine what a complete being that person would be? To understand or evaluate the world from three levels of knowledge. So let us begin.
All the information that we have about the external world is conveyed to us by our five senses.
So all the knowledge we have of the external world, that which we've understood, is come by reductionistic idea, empiric study, the study of knowledge from the using our senses. And what has that taught us about life? Well, let's see.
The world we know of consists of what our eyes see.
So we use the eyes, we use our five senses in particular, but we know that the eyes have limitations. There are animals would see better than us, would see better in the dark as well. So if we want to understand the complete gamut or range of knowledge, then we can't just judge our eyes for for the purpose of seeing. We need to use other forms of higher or deeper levels of knowledge.
Our ears hear.
What our ears hear by hearing, we know there's other levels of hearing also. Animals have a deeper sense of hearing.
Our noses smell. Our tongues taste. And our hands feel.
So these five senses which we use to understand and analyze the world, is it complete in itself to give us the full range of knowledge? Well, let's see.
Man is dependent on only those five senses since birth.
So from birth, this is what we have to understand the world.
That is why he knows the external world only the way it is presented by these senses.
And note there, the person mentioned the external world. So does that mean that there's another world? Well, we also have an inner world. As much as vast as the outer world is, we also have an inner world, which spirituality explores, and which, even if you don't go to that level of depth, we have an inner world which is an emotional world. It's our psychological world. At least that is still everybody can relate to as an inner part of who we are.
Yet, scientific research carried out on our senses has revealed very different facts about what we call external world.
So, knowledge is trying to give us information about reality, about what is real, what is reality, what is the nature of our existence out there and in here. So, like you can see there, with technology being so advanced, they've created an MRI scanner which can evaluate or give data in real time. So we know the MRI scanner scans one's body or different parts of one's body at a very deep level, where very micro level of one's being, of one's physical body. But to get that in real time, where it is happening while the person is thinking, you can see the synapse move on the computer screen, kind of thing. That is amazing advancement, and that's the level we've achieved in our technological advancement today. And what has that revealed about reality to us? Well, we are going to be amazed at what has come about. Let's take a look at this.
And these facts have brought to light a very important secret about matter, which makes up the external world.
So, what is that secret? Let's try and find out.
Contemporary thinker Frederick Vester explains the point that science has reached on this subject.
We're bombarded by huge amounts of information, and it's coming into our body and we're processing it, coming in through our sense organs.
So, when knowledge, when information comes to us, it comes in through the five senses and it all goes to the brain, and the brain filters it out to see what is valuable, what is not valuable, what can I use, what is important, what is threatening, what is going to create harm to me, what is not, what is going to give me pleasure, what is not. And the brain is constantly filtering this out. Now, if I had to just ask you arbitrarily, how much of information does come into the brain? Well, we just saw that MRI scanner, right? So, how much of information does that scanner say is happening in the brain at any one time, say in 1 second? How much of information goes through the brain in 1 second, both from the inner part of the body, all the organs working to keep the body in balance, and then from the senses coming out from the outer part of the body, from the environment, all of that going into the brain at one time? How much of activity is the brain doing in 1 second? Let's try to see that.
It's percolating up, and at each step we're eliminating information. And finally, what is bubbling up to consciousness is the one that's the most self-serving.
The brain processes 400 billion bits of information a second, but we're only aware of 2,000 of those. But our awareness...
So, did you hear that? I'm going to rewind it and we're going to hear it again.
Most self-serving.
The brain processes 400 billion bits of information a second, but we're only aware of 2,000 of those.
So the brain processes 400 billion, that's with the B, 400 billion bits of information in 1 second. But how much did the scanner show is active from the environment and from ourselves? This MRI scanner revealed that only 2,000 of that is accountable in 1 second. What does that show? That is not even a fraction of a percent of what the brain is receiving. Now it really makes one think, and very seriously and very deeply about life. If the brain is interpreting only 2,000 of 400 billion bits of information a second, what is all this knowledge that is coming to the brain and where is it coming from? And why can't we interpret it? And how do we interpret it? What does it take? What system of knowledge can we use to read this kind of level of information? Because let's face it, right now, with the best knowledge we have, we can only account for 2,000 bits of information, whereas the brain is processing 400 billion bits of information. So, what system of knowledge can help us to understand or interpret all these other levels of knowledge? And where is that information or stimulus coming from that the brain is interpreting? Because it's not physical. I'll repeat that again. It's not physical. It's not coming from our realm. So, where is it coming from? It's coming from another dimension. Aha! Now we have some scientific evidence showing the existence or the connection of the human being to another dimension of reality, which is beyond the material physical plane. Now, the great sages of the Vedic tradition spoke about this dimension, and they call the process spirituality. And they advise that by the level of raising one's consciousness, one becomes aware of reality on these deeper levels. So let's rewind it again, and hear the complete clip.
The one that's the most self-serving.
The brain processes 400 billion bits of information a second, but we're only aware of 2,000 of those. But our awareness of those 2,000 bits of information are just about the environment, our body, and about time.
So you see there, it's only about the body, the environment, and time, which keeps it all material and physical to us. So the Vedic scriptures reveal, especially the Bhagavad Gita, mentions this point. And it says there in chapter 2, verse 16, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satam, ubayorupi dristantas tvanayas tattvadarshibhi. It explains that those who are seers of the truth, they are also searching for knowledge. See that? They are seers of the truth. What do they know? Have concluded that of the non-existent, which is the material body, we know it doesn't last very long. It lasts one lifetime and then it deteriorates, decays, dies, dwindles. So many things happens to it. So it's non-existent. So of the non-existent, there is no endurance. It doesn't last long. And of the eternal, that means the spirit or the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. They have studied the nature of both. And the big word there in the center is studying. So they've also wanted to know. They have also seekers of knowledge. They also, you can imagine at that time, there may not have been universities in the formal institutional way that we have it today. But they were also seekers of the truth, and they were also seekers of knowledge, and they have studied the nature of both matter and spirit. So, what is the defect of our modern society? The modern society only studies the non existent, the material nature, that which is empiric or available to the senses. But what this new data has shown us is that we're not even touched 1% of a fraction of what is coming into the brain. How do we read that information or interpret it? Well, the sages were also interested, and from their study, they say by raising one's consciousness, by focusing on the eternal, that which is the spirit or the soul, then one raises his consciousness to a higher level. And what have they understood by doing this? Well, we see in the Bhagavad Gita again, there's another verse that explains the nature of this kind of study. This is verse again, Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 2. Raja Vidya Raja Guyam pavitramidam uttamam pratyaksha vargamam dharmam susukam kartam avyayam. That this knowledge is the king of education. Again, it's a process of study. They have studied this. It's just not some sentimental group of people just doing some crazy rituals. They have studied the nature of both. Mm? And Krishna in the Gita advises that this level of knowledge, of raising one's consciousness to higher and higher levels, is the king of knowledge. So he describes this here. This knowledge is the king of education. It's the most secret of all secrets. That's why everybody doesn't know about it. And it's only due to our spiritual teacher in the last 50 years that the whole world has actually come to have insight on the deep truths which is propounded in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That is His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. So he goes on to say here, it is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. So you can see the self, it gives direct perception, but how? Through realization, not through empiric study. It's not through a telescope or a microscope, it's through realization. It's the evolution of one's consciousness. Therefore, it is the perfection of religion. Therefore, this is what religion should be able to do. What religion is doing today, it is caught up mainly in the ritualistic pursuits of social integration and the glamour of status and hierarchy. But in today, what knowledge is available in the Bhagavad Gita is saying the perfection of religion is to know this. And therefore, Krishna concludes, it is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So it is everlasting, it is eternal, like we heard in the previous verse, and it is joyfully performed. That which every man wants, to be satisfied, to feel satisfaction. So let's move on. So the pursuit of knowledge then is to give us this insight. Now, how many institutions or which institutional academic faculty is teaching this kind of knowledge, where one should be able to understand how to raise one's consciousness beyond just the physical paradigm? Very few, if any. Actually, very few, hardly. Most of them are privatized, if at all. But this knowledge, Krishna is saying, is the king of knowledge. And this is where the defect in our education system is. We're not understanding the full range of knowledge. Therefore, it's not complete. It's not true. So we study many things. We study languages. We study law. We study science. We study business. We study so many things, but where is the faculty that is teaching the science of the soul? And after studying all of this, we see that we accumulate all this knowledge, and yet by our pursuits of this high level of material knowledge, we're not happy, we're not satisfied. We feel empty and we feel depressed, suicidal. We can't make sense of life. Why is life so demanding? Why is life so difficult? If this knowledge is actually complete, it should make us a complete being. But it's not. It's just facilitating our academic area of life, our study area of accumulating material knowledge. But it's not making us a complete being. Because more than just the physical body, we're also the psyche, the psychological nature of ourselves, our emotions. So what happens to that part of who we are? And here is where the defect or the flaw in just accumulating material knowledge comes through. We see people are frustrated They're angry, there's hatred being built, and they don't know what to do. We see in a home situation where families are broken up, divorces are on the increase, and children don't know how to relate to parents. Parents don't know how to relate to children. And if you brought up in this environment, then what was the value of your knowledge of gaining all this wonderful scientific information, but you sacrificed your self actually? What is the value of gaining all of this? At the end of life, you don't know who you are or what you're supposed to be. What is the purpose of your life? What is the purpose of a human being? That is the ultimate true knowledge. What is the purpose to be a human being? What does it mean to be human or be humane? You see big people, very highly professional, financially amazing tycoons, but they're lonely, they're empty inside. Why is that? Where has the knowledge gone wrong? So, the true purpose of all knowledge is to gain happiness. And how to gain that happiness? Krishna has mentioned in this verse we just read just now, 9.2, where he says it's joyfully performed by understanding to balance one's life materially and spiritually, creating the harmony within that. That is the when the true joy of the human spirit comes about.
For the average person in the world who lives life and considers their life boring or uninspiring is because they've made no attempt to gain knowledge and information that will inspire them.
So this person's opinion on it is that how much attempt did we make to get information about life that will inspire us, or we were just satisfied with what the education system threw at us, what the education system has given us through primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of study? Did we really start to find out where is the genuine true knowledge about life?
They're so hypnotized by their environment through the media, through television, through people living and creating ideals that everybody struggles to become.
So the nature of the world is that the whole world is run by a handful of people. And these people create ideals for us. They advertise, they create ideals that nobody can actually live up to or become.
That no one can actually become in terms of physical appearance and definitions of beauty and valor that are all illusions.
So his opinion on it is that this is all an illusion, and we've bought into it. By the level of knowledge that we've accumulated, we feel that this is the best thing, and we've bought into this lifestyle.
That most people surrender and live their life in mediocrity.
And most people just surrender to this and say, well, this is the definition of life, nothing more than this. And they live their lives in mediocrity. No attempt to make it better, to inquire deeper into deeper philosophical and spiritual truths about life.
And they may live that life, and the soul may never really, their desire may never really rise to the surface. So they may want to be something else. But if it does rise to the surface...
So what happens when somebody actually, when that desire does rise to the surface and one actually inquires about philosophical and spiritual truths about life, then what happens?
And they ask themselves if there is something more, or why am I here? What is the purpose of life?
So these are some of the questions people would ask then when one has come to that point of being utterly frustrated with life and cannot make any sense of it. Then he or she comes to this point of asking, well, why am I here? What is the point of life? And who am I? Who am I actually?
Where am I going?
Where am I going?
What happens when I die?
And what happens to me when I die?
they start to ask those questions, they start to flirt and interact with the perception that they may be having a nervous breakdown. And in reality, what they're doing is that their old concepts of how they viewed their life in the world start to fall apart.
So you see, the value of the human body is just 210 rupees if we break it down to chemicals. I would like to think that everybody is worth more than that.
What is the meaning of life? People have grappled with that big question for all of time.
So what is then the meaning of life? Because people have asked this question throughout life. And if you've gained knowledge but you haven't answered this question, then what is the value of the knowledge that you gained? So what is the meaning of life then? So I would like to show you how important this question is, that there is even courses being offered on this that cost thousands of dollars to try to understand the deeper meanings of life. But what I would like to show you is that how people have appreciated the Vedic contribution. There are many people who have contributed to the meaning of life. Let's take a look at some of them.
Just asking it can be life-changing.
And just asking this question is life-changing.
Fortunately, you can gain rich insights from history's deepest thinkers.
So these are some of history's deepest thinkers who use genuine true knowledge, who've understood the value and the power of knowledge that can transform somebody's life if they come into contact with a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of knowledge.
And use their teachings to shed light on the profundities, paradoxes, and peculiarities of existence.
So this is a course which is being offered here.
Hi there, I'm Ed Leon for the Great Courses.
It's called the Great Courses, and it costs actually thousands of dollars to buy this. And it's very valuable, very appreciated. But at the same time, the Vedic tradition of what we are trying to offer is so much cheaper, so much more intense and more deeper.
The meaning of life, perspectives from the world's great intellectual...
So this is the meaning of life, perspectives from the world's great intellectual traditions. So note the word there, intellectual traditions. These are not some sentimental people living in India who are just worshipping some cows and some stones in a ritualistic way and pretend and making this to be God. This is a deep scientific process which has come down in a disciplic succession, passed down from grand master to disciple over thousands of years. Our spiritual teacher Srila Prabhupada is the 32nd person to receive this knowledge right from Krishna himself. So it's an unbroken chain of disciplic spiritual master and teacher and disciple that has come down over thousands of years. So this person, why I'm showing you this, because highlighting those words, intellectual traditions, and note which tradition he mentions first.
Traditions is an invigorating exploration into life's most persistent question. It draws on diverse views from Eastern and Western traditions.
So it takes views from Eastern and Western traditions, but the first person he mentions is?
Including the spirituality of Krishna.
The spirituality of Krishna. And so Krishna's teachings, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, is very deep and profound. So what we are trying to show you, if this course is costing thousands of dollars, and if they have appreciated it as some of the great intellectual traditions of the world, and they are presenting it here as a formal course, then the teachings of Krishna are just not sentimental belief. It's being appreciated by great thinkers, great profound people of the world. Let's see also some of the others.
And the Dalai Lama, the philosophy of Aristotle, Kant, and Confucius, as well as religious framework.
So, having established Krishna's philosophy of being one of the greatest in the world, we'd like to show you that what perspective we're presenting here is absolutely free, but it's deeply profound. And I'm sure and I hope that it has stimulated some thought of thinking about life a little differently. Now for something a little more practical, I mean, speaking philosophy all the time, it's a little taxing on the brain. So I'd like to challenge you. I'd like to challenge your perspective, and I want to just see how smart are you really. Okay? All right, I'd like to offer you three different tests. This is the first one. And if your material knowledge is perfect, and if by studying matter or the nature of the world, just using your senses, could you make a mistake? Could you be defective? And if it is defective, then how can you use that system of knowledge to achieve the highest level of knowledge? You're going to need another system, some system which is higher, where your consciousness is able to raise to a higher platform. So let's see that. Okay, here's the first test for all the great smart people out there. Okay, this is the first one. If you observe this video clip here, what do you see there the gentleman doing? I think everybody would say, without a doubt, immediately he is washing a truck that is being parked off. Okay, so let's try to observe this. And as he's washing the truck, aha! And now, what has happened there? It was a truck. It looked like the guy was washing it, and by my direct sense perception or empirical study, I seem to have made a mistake there. I seem to have misinterpreted it. So the first one you got wrong. Now this happened to me actually. If I'm originally from India, and if this was India, where a tractor was just parked in the middle of the road, out in the middle of nowhere, it wouldn't be a problem. It's okay. It happens in India. Wonderful India, they call it, right? It happens in India. It's no big deal. But I was in the middle of a suburb, and I was observing, and all of a sudden this car came up, and he came out of the car, and you know about road rage, right? And I heard about this, but I haven't seen it. And I said, oh my God, this guy stopped his car right in front of this tractor, and he's jumping out of the vehicle, and oh no, he's coming up to me. Oh no, now what am I gonna tell him? And as he came up to me, he came right up to me, and then, aha, he lifted the tractor up. So, sorry, what is the score there again? I think you got 2 out of 3 wrong, right? Don't worry, I also got it wrong the first time round. This shows knowledge is not perfect. Okay, and this is the third one. Okay, this one you have to get right, okay? If you look at this picture very carefully, what do you immediately see? I think everybody, even if it's a school-going child, you would say immediately, this is a duck. I see the duck. I see this picture. But look at it carefully. Look at the beak of the duck as long pointy ears. Do you see now that it's also actually a rabbit? Aha, you do see it. So, is it a duck or is it a rabbit? Which one is it? So, if you look at this carefully enough, you'll see it's very difficult to differentiate. It looks both. It looks like a rabbit on the left and it looks like a duck on the right. So, it's not so easy to differentiate, right? This is called a bifocal image. So it's very difficult to see the difference in both. Again, if you just trust your senses only, then you won't know what is reality. So how do we discern reality then? So the process of discerning reality is to move the consciousness to a higher level. If you move your consciousness to a higher level, to a subtler level, to a higher level, more evolved, then in that state one can actually perceive deeper truths of life. Now we move on to the second level, the metaphysical level. And this metaphysical level of knowledge is not something that's so easy to discern, but objectively science has found amazing aspect of metaphysical structures existing within our human being. Let's take a look at this.
According to the synchronized universe model, when our own frequency synchronizes with a parallel universe or dimension, it allows us to perceive it in the form of a vision.
So this is a little technical, but because it's metaphysical and we're trying to keep to science, just bear with us. We will try to simplify it in the most simple way so that at least you get the essence of what is being spoken.
Powers of levitation, miracles, knowledge, enlightenment, and even healing. Our bodies are made of atoms and subatomic particles. 99.9% of our body weight is comprised of protons and
So 99.9% of our body weight, and this is the interesting part, okay, comprises of protons. All right, so we got that first part. That means most of my body consists of these things called protons
neutrons,
and neutrons,
which are then made of hexagons of 6 quarks.
So within them, they are made up of, what is protons and neutrons made up of? They are made up of hexagons made up of 6 quarks, a different kind of, it's deeper now than the proton, and it's made up of this thing called quarks.
Each made of dual pairs.
And each one of these quarks then are made of 2 pairs, dual pairs. And below that, I have these quarks. And these quarks are made of 2 pairs, dual pairs. Okay, I got that.
Among the quarks are the mysterious strange and anti-strange quark.
So within these dual pairs, these 2 pairs of quarks, there's 2 different types there. One is the strange one. So what is strange about it? Let's see.
They are called strange because they have the ability to randomly just disappear from the core of the atom and then strangely reappear.
Now that is very profound, because if this strange quark randomly just disappears, it goes somewhere and reappears somewhere else. And let's go through the order again. We have protons, and below the protons we got these quarks. 2 types of quarks. One is the strange quark and one is the normal one. The strange one seems to disappear. And let me remind you again, if the body is made up of 99% of these protons, what does it tell us about ourselves? That a part of us, who we are, seem to disappear into another dimension, and we have no information about this. A part of who we are seems to disappear into another dimension, and we have no information about this reality. Now, this is as far as science has taken us. Now, if we take it back to the first clip that I showed you, you remember the calculation of the impulses coming into the brain. The brain was calculating 2,000 bits of information. But what was being shown by the MRI scanner in real time was 400 billion. Now it seems to make sense that the brain is connecting to another dimension of reality which seems to disappear. Part of us seem to disappear, and the brain is able to connect to that. Where is it going to? Well, we'd like to propose the reality, real existence of the spiritual world. From the metaphysical to the spiritual world. And this is evidence of that. And due to this, one can infer on a very high level of evolved consciousness in the material plane, things like remote viewing and mental telepathy, things that seem absolutely strange to us now. But where are these quarks going to? What's happening to it? So by connecting on a subtle level, these things may be possible. Am I speaking all science fiction here? Well, let's see what's the evidence for this.
There is no mathematical model to quantify the timing of when and why they will do this. Is there a connection to the behavior of the strange quark in human consciousness? Knowing that we are also made of a significant percentage of strange quarks, That portion of us is dematerializing and rematerializing at random.
So there's the proof of it. This is one description of it, what I was trying to say. That a portion of us dematerializes and rematerializes every moment, and we have no information about it.
All of the time. No one has been able to determine where the strange quarks travel to, other than the fact that they disappear into other dimensions and reappear. Do they travel to other dimensions to gain information or to communicate at a distance? This behavior demonstrates that part of our consciousness does travel into other dimensions.
So this behavior demonstrates that part of our consciousness travels to other dimensions. And if we want to understand this, then it's important that we learn how to raise our consciousness. That's the point of what I was trying to share with you. That if you raise your consciousness, then you're able to understand and interpret the knowledge that's coming from those higher dimensional existences.
Can this help explain communication at a distance and mental telepathy? In the 1970s, President Carter, the CIA, and the Air Force used two psychics trained in remote viewing to locate a lost Russian Tu-22 bomber.
So if this was so science fiction, how come President Carter trained and used this kind of technology to find an aeroplane? So it's not just all far out. I think the CIA are in contact with something here. So it makes you think, doesn't it?
Which no other forces could find. The remote viewers gave blind latitude-longitude coordinates that led Air Force officials to point their satellite cameras deep into the jungles of Africa, precisely where the Russian Tu-22 had crashed.
So this is exactly, they gave the coordinates, and when they pointed the satellite cameras there, they exactly found this aeroplane in the jungles of Africa. Now, how coincidental can that be? You'll be surprised to know that the American military department also has a department, sub-department within it for remote viewing. So if this is all just science fiction, how come this is there? How come they have this department there? They must trust its credibility, right?
The significance of the case where Carter talks about how remote viewers were used to find the missing bomber that had gone down in the jungle shows that remote viewing can be very accurate and can be useful. That his comments about the case were a little bit of an oversimplification. There was more than one remote viewer actually involved. They do it several times to check one another. But the fact is that remote viewing, number one, can be very accurate, and number two, was really used for important cases over an extended period of time. And even though they claim that it's finished and there's no more remote viewing going on, that's what they said before they admitted that this program was there too. So you can make your own conclusions about that. The point is that consciousness really can be used to give us information that might otherwise be unobtainable.
So you heard him say that consciousness can be used to give us information which may otherwise be unobtainable. So this is my point in this whole presentation. If we know how to raise our consciousness, then we can experience or understand life or reality from a different level. And this is what Bhagavad Gita was telling us. Remember earlier on that the sages, they studied, the seers, they studied the nature of both. They didn't just study matter or only spirit. They studied the nature of both. And we're offering this opportunity to study the nature of both and to raise your consciousness in this way. So the third level now is spiritual knowledge. So we've discovered material knowledge, we've discussed material knowledge, we've discussed metaphysical knowledge, very interesting, and now spiritual knowledge. Now, how can we have evidence of spiritual knowledge, which means, and being objective? How is that possible? Well, there's an amazing mathematical code that seems to have come up in nature that will absolutely blow your mind. Let's take a look at this code.
As we look at the details of nature, one thing stands out. This is the order, the patterns, the symmetry that surround us. You can see it in a flower, or a snowflake, or even a seashell. What we are seeing is intelligent design.
There seems to be intelligent design pre-programmed into everything that is living. There seems to be a mathematical formula that governs everything. We thought things just grew randomly, right? So many petals on a flower, stems and birds and everything like that, patterns and designs. Well, when you look at it a little closer, there seems to be a mathematical design used in this, like a software. And if it's repeatable, if the same number is coming up again and again in nature, what does that tell you? That means it has a common creator. And that creator must be a mathematician, a very intelligent person who's used mathematical code in everything that he's created. Let's take a look at this closer.
Which might be described as God's fingerprints upon nature.
So this is described as God's fingerprints in nature. Let's look at this a little closer.
One of the more fascinating math relationships was first described back in medieval times, 8 centuries ago. The scholar's name was Leonardo Fibonacci, an outstanding Italian mathematician. He excelled in many areas, and one in particular. He generated a long list of numbers.
So this is the list of numbers that he generated, and it's actually very simple. Let's see how this works.
By, in each case, adding together the two previous numbers.
So you got two numbers, and then you add them together. So 2 and 3 here, what will that give you? It'll give you 5.
With a 2.
So 2 and 3 will give you 5. So you write down 5. So the next number will be what? 3 plus 5. So 3 plus 5 will give you?
2 and a 3. You add them together and you get 5.
You'll get 8. So the first one, 2 plus 3 is 5. The next number, 3 plus 5 equals 8. The next number, 5 plus 8.
Now add 3 and 5 to get 8. Then add 5 and 8 to get...
You're seeing the system here? You're seeing the pattern?
13. The Fibonacci sequence keeps going like this.
So this is how it goes. It goes 1, 3,
2, 3,
5, 8,
8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, and so on.
So this number sequence, we're seeing these numbers come up in everything in nature, from plants to animals to everything, to the human body. And if this is a number mathematical sequence, then it shows it was created. How can there be a mathematical pattern in something that was just is abstracted or created by chance? It can't be. The fact that these things apply mathematically, why does science have to follow mathematical laws of mathematics? If it was just came out from a big bang, everything exploded from a big bang, why does it follow mathematics? It makes you think, doesn't it? And if it's following this system of number sequence, it tells me, and I think it tells any logical person, that there is a mathematical creator out there. Let's see some more examples.
What Fibonacci realized was that this elegant list of numbers describes many items to be found in nature. For example, flower petals.
L'exemple des pétales d'une marguerite. Vous dites, il n'y a pas de hasard au nombre de pétales d'une marguerite?
Non, absolument. Le nombre des pétales de marguerite est en fait inscrit dans un scénario qu'on pourrait qualifier de scénario cosmologique, c'est-à-dire que tout a été prévu au départ et que le nombre des pétales, c'est incroyable.
Une seule marguerite avec 27 pétales, ça n'existe pas.
Il n'y a pas de pétales, il n'y a pas
de marguerite avec 27, c'est pas possible. C'est pas possible. Et le nombre de pétales d'une marguerite est réglé par une loi mathématique qu'on appelle la suite de Fibonacci.
That there is a mathematically precise structure to the universe and everything in it. One everyday example of this precision can be found in the plants.
So these are the examples he's showing us in plants. Let's take a closer look.
Many plants, including elm trees, grow their leaves, twigs and branches placed exactly halfway around the stem from each other. Next in the series are plants like the beech tree, with leaves placed 1/3 of the way around the stem from the previous leaves.
So you see, you got 1/3, you got halfway, 2 and 3. So the next one.
Third in the series are the plants like the oak, with leaves placed at every 2/5 of a turn.
So 2/5 of a turn. The next, which is the oak trees.
The holly plant is the next at 3/8.
The next one, 3/8. 2/5, 3/8.
While the larch trees are the next at 5/13.
And the next one, 5/13. These are trees. Why do they have to have this kind of spacing and so mathematically correct and accurate?
And the sequence goes on and on. Notice the number sequence of these fractions: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. Each number is the sum of the two numbers which came just before it in the sequence. This particular mathematical pattern is called the Fibonacci series.
Take, for example, the sunflower.
This is an amazing one. This is the sunflower plant. I think we all know we use a lot of sunflower oil in our cooking. So let's see the sunflower plant.
The display of its florets are in perfect spirals of 55, 34, and 21.
So 55, 24, and 31. The three different levels and three different layers of this flower. The center, the outer, and the extreme outer petals. How is that so accurate like that? If there was no mathematical designer behind it?
The sequence of Fibonacci. The sequence of Fibonacci. The sequence of Fibonacci. The sequence of Fibonacci. The fruitlets of the pineapple.
This is the pineapple. Everybody loves pineapples. So let's see the pineapple plant.
Create the same spiral based on the sequence. The pine cone does the same. As currents move through the ocean.
And for me, this is the most amazing evidence, because we know in scripture it says that not a blade of grass moves without the will of God. Now, that's one thing to see a blade of grass move, but something in motion like water, would you predict that water can be accurately mathematically calculated? Wow, that would really be amazing. Let's see how.
And the tide rolls onto the shore. The waves that bring in the tide curve into a spiral that can be mathematically diagrammed onto a plot at the points 1, 1, 2.
So this is a wave that can be mathematically diagrammed on a plot. That a wave can have this kind of measurements. Water in motion can have this kind of accurate mathematical measurements. There has to be a creator. There has to be some kind of, how can a wave, something in motion and something as intangible as water that changes shape all the time, how can it curve and develop a wave that can be calculated mathematically? Please explain to me. I think this is beyond a doubt now, where we reach the point of knowledge. So we've come, just in a quick summary, we've come from material knowledge and showing its limitation. Then we showed you the metaphysical level of knowledge, and we showed you the two kind of quarks, and the subtle quark, the one that disappears, where I was saying if it does so, and 99% of our body made of protons, then a huge part of our body disappears, and we have no knowledge of this. And now we're seeing spiritual information where water or things in nature can be mathematically calculated, can be plotted. Everything from water to plants. Let's see further.
3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and 55. Buds on trees, sand dollars, starfish, petals on flowers are formed with this exact same blueprint. This blueprint can be seen around us on a small scale every day, but the greatest example of all is directly above our heads.
Now, it's one thing seeing it in nature in and around us on this planet. And you may get a scientist who would say, well, it's coincidental because it's only happening here on the planet. what if we're seeing the same pattern, this mathematical pattern out in the cosmos? What if we're seeing it there? Then would it be coincidental? Well, let's see.
Hits. At an average of 100,000 light years across, even the spiral of the galaxies above us are formed with the exact design.
Even the spiral of the galaxies above us are made with the exact design. Now, tell me it's coincidental?
This sequence, or blueprint, appears to be the trademark of a designer, a proof of a creator.
So it's a trademark of a designer. Just like any computer program is designed, it's created, and the blueprint of it is ones and zeros. For nature, it's this number system sequence, and the code for it is 1.68. That is the number.
Also known as the golden mean.
Which is also known as the golden mean. Let's look at this a little more in detail.
Divine proportion is a mathematical formulation exhibited in everything from the double helix of DNA.
The DNA molecule.
So this is the DNA, which is the fundamental basis of life. Can it be found there also? Well, let's see.
Code for life is made up of two intertwining spirals. We find the 0.618 ratio between the helix's width and cycle length.
So again, the 0.618 ratio, again within the double helix of the human DNA.
To the form of the human body itself.
So the human body, physically, externally, do we find this 0.618 ratio again? Let's see.
Do something like measure the distance from the floor to your navel, and then from your navel to your head. If you're well proportioned, the ratio should be 1 to 1.618, and that ratio is seen all over the beautiful body.
People started noticing it. Artists noticed it. The width of the mouth in a beautiful face, for example. Yeah. Not in any face, but it had to be beautiful. If a face was beautiful, the width of the mouth was exactly 1.618 times the width of the nose. If the face wasn't beautiful, that wasn't the case. Dentists, in their dental work, noticed that the upper front tooth was 1.618 times as wide as the next tooth over, the lateral incisor. Oh. So the central incisor was 1.618 times the width of the lateral incisor.
So we're seeing it here in dentistry. We're seeing it in the human body, in the face.
Next tooth over.
Wonderful. Give me some more examples.
So let's see some more examples.
Your fingers, your fingers are each called phalanges, and each bone of the finger is called a phalanx. And the phalanx that's the closest to your knuckle here is 1.618 times the phalanx that's in the middle, and that's 1.618 times the length of the phalanx at the end, which is your fingernail.
So again and again and again and again and again, this number is coming up, 1.618. Can it be coincidental? Just like if it again and again and again, in the basic structure of a computer program software, you get ones and zeros, what will you predict from that? That it just happened by chance? Won't you logically predict that it's a person who has combined this to create a software for the computer? I think it's a logical proposition. And here we're seeing the same logic in nature, but no, there is no creator. I think that's a little illogical. Let's see further.
So that was kind of amazing. This number would come up over and over again.
Then we find the Fibonacci ratio in heart muscles, in bronchial tube branch.
So it's in bronchial tubes, in heart muscle.
Even in the electrical potential of neurons.
In the brain, in neurons.
And as Roger Penrose pointed out, even in the arrangement of the brain's microtubules.
And even in the microtubules of the brain, it's there, 1.618 ratio.
As we scan our universe, from the tiny flower to the awe-inspiring galaxy, we see the fingerprint of God. We see the fingerprint of God. We see the fingerprint of God.
As we're going to show in this broadcast today, that there is no doubt at all anymore that the science of intelligent design absolutely crushes any competition, absolutely crushes any other theory about the nature of the universe that we live in. it's over. There is simply no contest. The preeminent theory, model, science of reality from this point forward, I declare on this show, is the science of intelligent design. The science of intelligent design. And the absolute proof. I mean absolute. I'm using a strong word there, proof, is going to be given to you today in just a minute here. I just can't even believe it, to be honest. Discoveries like what I'm about to discuss to you just never cease to amaze me. For many reasons, that it's all covered. Nobody knows, it's covered up. And, well, since I was taught growing up that the world was basically a random universe, to find out such hardcore, distinct verification that that's a lie just never ceases to amaze me. So here's the information.
So right at the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned that I wanted to keep this as objective as possible, and I hope I've tried to do that to the best of my capacity. And now we want to show with modern scientific journals speaking about intelligent design, which would give information on the spiritual basis of knowledge.
I'm reading from the abstract of an article. This is the first of many academic articles I'm going to be discussing with you here today. And these aren't just some academic journals. These are, you go ask your university professor what the most prestigious academic science journals in the world are, and they're going to name the ones that I'm discussing here with you.
So you can see it's very prestigious journals. These are what goes out into the scientific community. This is what goes out to the world. It comes out of these journals. So let's see what's written in there speaking about intelligent design. Because an intelligent design means that intelligent designer. And who is that intelligent designer? Spirituality proclaims that as God.
Today. Okay. I'm going to read to you right now the journal Nature. Okay. There's a journal called Nature and there's a journal called Science. Those are considered the two most prestigious overall academic science journals in the world. And I'm going to read you part of the abstract of one right now. Let me just read. Okay, this is the journal Nature, number 454, pages 362 to 363. March 18, 2010, but put online March 17, 2010. This is by a fellow named Ian Affleck, who teaches apparently in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of British Columbia. Listen to the title of this article. Solid State Physics. Golden Ratio Seen in Magnet. Okay? Okay, so let's go through this Science Daily article. ScienceDaily.com. This was released on January 7, 2010. Title of the article, Golden Ratio Discovered in Quantum World. Hidden Symmetry Observed for the First Time in Solid State Matter. Let's find out what that means. Let's read here. Researchers from Helmholtz Zentrum Berlin, and it's some German words, in cooperation with colleagues from Oxford and Bristol universities, as well as the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory, United Kingdom, have for the first time observed a nanoscale symmetry hidden in solid state matter. Okay, did you catch that?
So that shows at a nanoscale, microscale, on the quantum level, they're finding this ratio. We found it on a macro level at material nature, and we found it on a huge cosmic level in the galaxies, the spiral of the galaxies. So everywhere, we're finding this ratio.
This is the first time any symmetry of any sort has been observed in the nanoscale.
So this is the first time any symmetry of any sort has been found, and that's such a small level of existence in the quantum level. And that coincidentally had to be the same ratio. So is that a coincidence again?
Okay, the quantum scale. Remember, quantum physics is the study of the base level energies of nature. Okay,
so it's the study of the base level energies of nature. Means if nature started to grow from this level, life came up from this level, and it's following this system of mathematical sequences, then what does it tell you?
Smallest building blocks that make up everything, little pieces of energy.
So it's the software that builds life.
Like the electron or the muon or the quark. Okay, so specifically what was found in this study was that chains of atoms lined up together form what's sort of like a string, and it resonates a frequency or pitch. What do you know? The pitch is in the ratio of 1.618, the golden ratio. Let me just read this paragraph to you. It says Science Daily, again, January 7, 2010, golden ratio discovered in quantum world. By turning the system and artificially introducing more quantum uncertainty, the researchers observed that the chains of atoms acts like a nanotech guitar string. Dr. Radu Koldia from Oxford University, who is the principal author of the paper and drove the international project from its inception a decade ago until the present, explains, here the tension comes from the interaction between spins, causing them to magnetically resonate. For these interactions, we found a series scale of resonant notes. The first two notes show a perfect relationship with each other. Their frequencies, pitch, are in the ratio of 1.618. This is just amazing. There's no defense that a random universe theorist in academia can give to counter this. There's no reason at all that the quantum base of reality should be exhibiting the specific number of the golden ratio if we live in a random universe. All the competing theories, evolution, random universe theories, all the junk from academia no longer competes in any way with intelligent design science, intelligent design theory. When you hear a scientist say on the Discovery Channel or something, an academic, a professional, say there's no evidence for intelligent design, it's all a silly little parlor game, and there's all this evidence for evolutionary science and the academic theories for the origins of the universe, you can know two things. One, we have to be compassionate because they simply don't know the empirical data. Okay? They have no idea. Academics typically only talk on their closed little worlds and only accept information from their closed little worlds. And the second thing we can know, and make no mistake about it, is they are absolutely propagandizing the world with all of their theses about the nature of the universe that we live in, where we come from, our origins, the origin of the universe, and so forth. And we realize that everything we've been taught before this point by the professionals were lies. And we can prove it up and down all over the place. Up and down all over the place. Up and down all over the place. And down all over the place.
There's no way
So that was powerful, wasn't it? And from what we've gathered, from what we've seen, from what we've learned, we learned about material knowledge, metaphysical knowledge, and now spiritual knowledge. Now the big question comes, okay, I accepted that yes, there's 3 levels of knowledge that are out there. Now the big question, how do I raise my level of consciousness? How do I get my level from the material level to the subtle metaphysical? How do I raise it higher than that to the spiritual level? Well, the science, like the Vedic scripture is saying, it can be done through the process of meditation. And this is the point, the pinnacle point of the whole presentation, that if you felt inspired by this presentation, then it will inspire you to take it further, to perform a process of meditation. And let's see what are the results of meditation in its immediate effect. Now here's a huge news anchor. Let's see what he has to say about it.
Fidgety and skeptical news anchor would ever have started meditating were it not for the science. The science is really compelling. It shows that meditation can boost your immune system, lower your blood pressure, help you deal with problems ranging from irritable bowel syndrome to psoriasis. And the neuroscience is where it really gets sci-fi.
So these were the external reasons of what meditation can do for you. Let's see now on a neural in the brain. What does meditation do for one in the brain?
There was a study out of Harvard that shows that short daily doses of meditation can literally grow the gray matter in key areas of your brain having to do with self-awareness and compassion. And
did you hear that? Is there anything that we know of in the material world that can grow the brain besides a tumor? Anything else that can grow the brain? This, by meditation, the area of the brain that deals with compassion can actually grow. Wow! Can you imagine what that will do to you as a person? Let's see further.
Shrink the gray matter in the area associated with stress.
And who is not stressed today? Please put it down both your hands, or please pick up both your hands. Who is not stressed today? Everybody is stressed. Meditation, from what this person is saying, quoting a Harvard study, is that it shrinks that part of the brain that affects one with stress. It shrinks it. That means no more stress. How do you deal with stress? Well, it helps you to deal with stress in that way. Let's see how.
There was also a study out of Yale that looked at what's called the default mode network of the brain. It's a connected series of brain regions that are active during most of our waking hours when we're doing that thing that human beings do all the time, which is obsessing about ourselves, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, doing anything but being focused on what's happening right now. Meditators not only turn off the default mode network of their brain while they're meditating, but even when they're not meditating. In other words, meditators are setting a new default mode.
Meditators are setting a new default mode. It's a new way of experiencing, of raising the consciousness, of understanding. So you can see it, it's becoming part of everyday life. So are you getting left out? Won't you want to become a better person than you already are? And if you are a go-getter and somebody that's really achieving high levels, can you imagine what this level of knowledge will do for you? Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Let's hear further.
And what's that default mode? They're focused on what's happening right now. In sports, this is called being in the zone.
So it keeps you in the zone. It keeps you supercharged and super connected. So in conclusion then, I'd like to represent it, like I said, 3 levels of knowledge. And the Vedic perspective is giving insight onto 3 levels of living in this material world with 3 levels of awareness. That of the material level, which everybody is used to and knows. That of the subtle metaphysical level, that may even give rise to mental telepathy and other amazing aspects of high-level consciousness. And, of course, on the last level, the spiritual level. The spiritual, like we've seen, even a wave can be mathematically calculated, which tells us then that there must be a creator. And if all this is giving insight to understanding this creator, what is the process and the method for understanding, and who is that? Well, in the Vedic tradition, the Vedas, the word Veda means knowledge, and this presentation is trying to understand what is true knowledge. So in the Vedas, it gives information about all these three levels. And in conclusion then, what would be the goal of the Vedas then? That Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. Sarvascha ham hridi sannivisto matta smitir jnanam apohanamscha vedascha sarve aham eva vedyo vedante krit vedavit eva chaham. Krishna says that I am the goal of the Vedas, and it's by me that the Vedas is to be known. So ultimately coming to that spiritual understanding of life and practice. So in conclusion then, what would be the process to understand Krishna in this way? The Vedas, as you can see here, this quote, this is a quote from the study of Lord Brahma, who is saying that Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti sodas kam nam kalikal mashana nashanam natta paratananyopaya sarva veda sadrisyate. He says, after searching through all the Vedic literature, one cannot find a method of religion more sublime for this age than the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So this is recommended in the Vedic scripture, that if you want to raise your knowledge to those high levels that we are speaking about, and if you want to understand a deeper aspect about your life, then please try to adopt this mantra in your life and see how it naturally and gradually progresses and develops your consciousness to experience life on both the material, metaphysical, and spiritual levels. So in conclusion then, I'd like to thank you for joining us for this presentation. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please join us again for the next presentation, and in the meantime, take care and be happy. Hare Krishna.